Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Live Show, Week 11 Waiver Wire Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to continue to get those fantasy lineups right. We got 4 weeks between us and the fantasy playoffs. Everyone, remember, friends and family come and go, but fantasy championship banners hang forever. So again, we got the best of the business in the house to help us accomplish all of those goals right now. Kendall, Valenzuela. What's up, K-Dog?
Let's go, Ian. We've got all the news. It's week 11. We're 4 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs. If anyone needed an extra kick this week, and all your family members, whoever's in your leagues, they're going to be distracted. Thanksgiving, Christmas, they're like presents, turkey, whatever. No, again, you step on their throats and you make sure to win the championship. So we're ready to go.
That's the freaking spirit, Kendall. I'm ready to run through a brick wall. I hope you are all as well. So with that, guys, let's get into it. Time for our DraftKings opening lines. Some rare good news in the NFL injury streets. Bengals QB Joe Burrow actually ahead of schedule in his recovery. He returned to practice today, obviously had surgery on that turf toe, and honestly, Kendall seems to be targeting Thanksgiving against the Ravens as his return. Honestly, it would be very fun to go ahead and see that ever-entertaining Lamar Jackson-Joe Burrow matchup. And as great as Joe Flacco has been, certainly would be a nice improvement for all of our fantasy teams as well. So hopefully you guys have, again, been stashing Joe Burrow on IR. But Kendall, it sounds like just based on Burrow and the press conference and everything we're hearing about the return to play date, it's not even a matter of, will the Bengals still be competitive? I think we're going to see Joe Burrow back in a few short weeks.
I'm shocked. I don't know about you, Ian. I'm shocked, as I think a lot of people are shocked. I thought the timeline would be, I think what they originally told us was December, right? And that was if they continued to make the push into the playoffs. But you love this for Joe Burrow. You love this for the Bengals overall as a whole, right? You already knew that if you had Jamar Chase, you were playing him. T. Higgins gets a boost up if he gets out there as well. But yeah, this is crazy to me. I mean, I looked everywhere. The Athletic has a really good, prediction calculator for end of season outcomes right now for the playoffs simulator. They're like 1% chance to make the playoffs. So I don't know if it's going to matter for real life NFL terms, but to see Joe Burrow go back out there is it's a nice way to end the season. And it's like a Christmas present that we didn't know we needed. And then you wrap it up and then that means he's going to be ready and good to go for next season as well. So you love to see it.
You hear that, guys? Kendall was saying that there is a chance, no matter how slim that might be. So good stuff there. Again, going to be Joe Flacco here for the next few weeks still, but hopefully Joe Burrow back by Thanksgiving. Also knows CJ Stroud does remain in a concussion protocol, as does Giants quarterback Jackson Dart. And Kendall sure seemed like that might have had something to do with Brian Dable getting fired. Unfortunately, again, 2-8 to start the season. Lost 4 games on the road where they led by 10 plus points at some point. Just ultimately did not have enough trust from the organization. So it sounds like they are going to be keeping Joe Shane in power as the GM. Offensive coordinator Mike Kafka will be serving as the interim head coach. So, it's unfortunate, Kendall, because you obviously lost Malik Neighbors, Cam Scatterbo. I mean, this team was looking fun at times, and I think we can all agree it wasn't like Dable necessarily was dealing with the world's most talented roster during his time in New York. But at the same time, just watching the way he just ruthlessly kept running Jackson Dart into the teeth of the defense time and time again, no matter what the score was, I see why the Giants made the decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's running into the blue medical tent being like, hey, get out of there. You're totally fine. I really need you to save my job. It felt inevitable, right? That if it wasn't going to work out, Dart represented Dable's kind of last chance to make things right with the Giants. I mean, he's got a .185 winning percentage. I think he's 20, 40, and 1 as a head coach. So it's not good. You're 2-8 right now. And I have a stat for you, Ian. So Dart has 25 designed runs that are the most among quarterbacks, despite him not taking over as the starter since week 4. So to put it into perspective, we had 4 weeks where he wasn't doing that. And then all of a sudden he leads the NFL. And then he's had 4 concussion, visits, right? 4 evaluations for a concussion. Yeah. And it's just all bad. So I think that, the writing was on the wall, but when Jackson Dart goes out with a concussion in that game, it was kind of just like, okay, we're done with this experiment. You've already lost Malik Neighbors. You've already lost Cam Scatterbo. Now you've got him in the concussion protocol. We'll see if he's able to go through it this week and get through for their next matchup. But I'd be a little bit surprised. But yeah, the Giants are bad, and there was no other fingers to point towards except for Brian Dable on this one.
Number one among all quarterbacks, despite not starting until week 4, and fantasy points from purely rushing production. I would be a little bit concerned about maybe that curbing off a little bit under Mike Kafka. Obviously, he's been the OC to begin with, but again, sure seems like that contributed to Dable getting canned. Wouldn't be surprised if, again, they push the brakes just a little bit on some of that dart rushing usage, but again, we'll know more about his status as the week goes on. Over in the running back street, still no timetable to return for Bucky Irving. Apparently, it's more so the shoulder issue than the foot. Still needs to be ready for contact. That said, we have Todd Bowles in charge of Tampa Bay, so rest assured we will get basically no helpful injury updates here as that situation continues to progress. Same issue here with Chris Godwin as he returns from the fibula injury. Also, no Patriots running back ahead of this Thursday night game against the Jets. Terrell Jennings believes he's day-to-day with a knee injury. Keep an eye on that. Obviously, we're going to feel good about starting Travion Henderson either way. Would feel better, though, if Jennings and Ramondre Stevenson do remain sidelined. Over at wide receiver, Rams wide receiver Devontae Adams suffered that oblique injury. That said, Sean McVay said after the game that he could have gone back in if the score was closer. So good news there. Not such good news, though, with the Jets. Jets. Kendall, Garrett Wilson with a knee injury did re-aggravate that previous one. He will miss 3 to 4 weeks. No surgery needed, which is good news, but it is just going to be rehab. So we got Tyler Johnson, Isaiah Williams, Arian Smith. Any of these guys going to be cracking your top 10 this week, Kendall?
Yeah, Ian, give me 80 Mitchell for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns this weekend. No, what are we doing? We were joking before the show. I didn't even know half these guys' names. If we just presented these names to the people right now, they'd be like, one of these is a lie. It's like 4 truths and a lie. One of these guys doesn't make sense. But no, with what we've seen from Justin Fields or the lack thereof in this offense, like, no, come on. We can't do this. What are we doing?
Breece Hall, and that is literally it for the Jets right now in Fantasyland. Also, no Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin already ruled out for Sunday as he continues to recover from that quad injury. At tight end, got some relative good news. Chargers tight end Rondé Gadsden considered day-to-day with that quad, so hopefully he is good to go as early as this week. Not so good, though, for Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid. He is considered week-to-week with that hamstring injury. Expect more Dawson Knox in the meantime. Also, note Jaguars tight end Brenton Strange will have his 21-day practice window open as he returns from hip and quad injury, so could be back sooner rather than later. And yeah, also Dan Quinn taking over as defensive coordinator for the Commanders. Always just such a great sign with your team when your head coach starts taking responsibilities away from the coordinators. I guess it happened with the Lions and things worked out there, but wouldn't necessarily equate those situations. Finally, Raiders offensive lineman Jackson Powers Johnson. He's gone IR. Not great news for Ashton Genty and company. Ravens corner Marlon Humphrey dealing with a finger issue. Could need surgery, which will sideline him for a week or two. And then Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson with a hip, doubtful to return this week. So with all that aside, guys, let's get into some waiver wire goodness. First, though, a quick shout out to our friends over at DraftKings and Huel. I teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. All you have to do is download DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money line spreads, and more, or stay in the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE, bet just $5, and get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 if your bet wins, paid out in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NBA season one to remember. Hey guys, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Huel who produce no prep, fast, nutritious, plant-based meals that don't compromise your health. Huel actually has 2 meal replacement products in particular that have really been helping me avoid skipping meals or feeling bad about eating something quick and crappy during the day. They got a ready-to-drink option including all sorts of tasty flavors. This right here, chocolate peanut butter is my personal favorite, and I've been pleasantly surprised at how full I've actually stayed for hours after drinking it. These include 35 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, 27 essential vitamins and minerals, no added sugar, also gluten-free, and guys, the best part, under $5 per meal and ready to go in this economy, no less. We also got a daily greens drink for which someone like me, who despises the existence of vegetables, really is a game changer to stay healthy, but also be quick about it. So I tried the greens powder over the years, to each company their own and everything, but I do personally think Huel's product is the tastiest that at least I have tried. So these are actually developed by registered nutritionists and dietitians. They contain only 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods, only 25 calories, which is good, 4 grams of fiber, fiber and just 1 single gram of sugar. So yeah, Huel, honestly, guys, again, is making healthy eating simple. They also just launched into Target stores nationwide. You can actually try both these products today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code FANTASYLIFE at www.huel.com/fantasylife. Use my code and fill out the post checkout survey to help support the show. Again, that's www.huel.com/fantasylife. Waiver Wire Monday here on the Fantasy Life Show, presented by the fine folks at Pristine Auction. Kendall, relatively light week, I think we can say, on the waiver wire. Again, we have some outstanding injuries, but a lot of them, for example, the J.K. Dobbins foot thing, which we'll touch on later, do involve, players rising up who basically are already rostered. But that said, we do have a trio of wide receivers we want to shout out because they actually aren't rostered on more than 50% of teams around the Yahoo and ESPN formats, and darn it, they really should be. So want to kick things off, Kendall, with, let's face it, the cover boy for week 10 waiver wire articles. That was Parker Washington. Ended up, returning some pretty great production for his faithful fantasy managers. 2 touchdowns, one of which was of the punt return variety. It just looks good out there, man. One of the latest, complimentary receivers to really just trip up Derek Stingley in coverage. Funny how that's becoming a recurring trend. Look good on offense and obviously special teams as well. So especially looking good moving forward, Kendall, is that does have to face the Houston Texans every week. What do you make of Parker Washington here in week 11 and beyond?
Yeah, I like Parker Washington. As long as you can play Parker Washington with Brian Thomas Jr. out, looking at this team, you say to yourself, okay, this is kind of nice. Like, because the days are numbered. Like, we can be honest about it, Ian. Like, it's not a great waiver wire week. If you've already picked up Parker Washington, you're going to keep him on your squads. But he is definitely, giving it back to you, right? Caught 3 of 7 targets, 33 yards, and the touchdown. The other one that you talked about here. But Jacoby Myers, I think, is going to get more acclimated to this team. So that's something that you just have to watch for. He ran only, I think, half the routes in this game. So once Jacoby Myers gets up to speed, once we see Brian Thomas Jr. back, obviously we're going to put Parker Washington kind of down the ranks. But until we see that that's going to happen, he's going to stay firmly up there. So again, Brian Thomas Jr. too, the connection with him and Trevor Lawrence hasn't been there this season. He's been banged up. So maybe he stays out another week. I'd be kind of surprised about that. But as long as you have Parker Washington, I think he's worth keeping on your rosters anyway, because again, this team's been banged up. So I wouldn't be shocked if we had to talk about BTJ going down with another injury this season. So I just hang on to him if you have him. And if these guys still aren't back and 100% healthy, you can play him this week.
Again, maybe not the best matchup this week against the Chargers, but certainly an upgrade over that Texans. After that, though, Kendall, things do open up nicely. They get the Cardinals, Titans, Colts, and Jets ahead of that fantasy playoff push. So really nothing's been easy in this Jaguars offense. I mean, we're literally at this point seeing T-Law regress to almost Urban Meyer level lows, Kendall, which again is not ideal when you just spent how much money bringing Liam Cohen into the picture. You drafted BTJ in the first round. You traded up for Travis Hunter. I know injury sucks, and I know that there's been a lot of drops from these wide receivers as well, but hard to shape this offensive season from the Jaguars as anything other than a disappointment at this point. Moving along, Kendall, we have White Lightning Colts wide receiver Alec Pierce continuing to pop up as someone who should be rostered in far more fantasy leagues than not. 12th in the NFL in yards per game right now. He is barely behind guys like Devontae Smith, Emeka Ibuka, and Justin Jefferson. So it's been great to see from Pierce. And again, just having watched, all these Colts games and everything, not of the fluky variety. The dude is winning with crispy routes, and he's also emerged as one of the better contested catch artists in the league. So he's led the NFL in yards per reception in back-to-back years at this point. Kendall, I love me some Alec Pierce.
I know. We've talked about Alec Pierce, I feel like, every single week. Let this be your sign to go and get him. The Colts are on a bye this week, so you can't do much with him. But if someone drops him in, because sometimes people make dumb decisions, it's not going to be you watching, but if someone for whatever reason says, I need someone to give me fantasy points right away, I'm hurting because of the injuries or whatever else, the Colts are on a bye, so sometimes they do drop players that they should not drop. Alec Pierce is one of those guys where if you see him around for whatever reason on your waiver wires, you have to pick him up immediately. I was looking through, he has at least 136 air yards in each of the past 4 games. He's had pretty good volume, right? He's given us wide receiver 2-ish finishes over the last month. He's just been good. And for someone that you've been able to pick up off the waiver wire that's given you, 10-ish fantasy points in game in, game out on average, you're going to take that any day of the weekend. So I still love Alec Pierce. I think this is just a really good guy that has kind of gone under the radar for too long. But now that we've been talking about him for 3-4 weeks, everyone should be getting on board. And like I said, if someone for whatever reason drops him, pick him up immediately. You can't play him this week, but you'll get him back for the next.
And that is the thing. We only have 2 bye weeks this week, but still 2 more
Yeah.
weeks after this. We are going to have another 4 teams on bye. So better time than ever to try to go ahead and scoop up some of these difference makers for it down the stretch. But yeah, guys, again, mentioned kind of some of the good efficiency stuff for Pierce. Finally found the end zone last week. Him and Jerry Jeudy, were kind of topping that leaderboard of having the most targets without a receiving score this season. Your new unfortunate front runners are Jacoby Myers and Kate Otten. So hopefully those guys manage to get that lack of a touchdown monkey off their back here before too long. But I will just say, as much as Daniel Jones has started to turn a little bit back into a pumpkin over these last 2 weeks, still playing relatively better than what we saw in New York and everything, but a lot more sacks taken, a lot more turnovers. He still managed to really drive the offense up and down the field, Kendall. And that would be, I guess, my confident feeling with still managing to trust his Colts offense moving forward. Don't get me wrong. Like, we're going to see situations where Pierce is going to dub because we got Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman, and Josh Downs in an offense that first and foremost wants to go through Jonathan Taylor. But man, last season in 2024 with completely different quarterbacks, Alec Pierce still led this team in receiving yards. I think at this point, we can just trust that the man is a pretty safe boomer bust wide receiver 3 more weeks than not.
Yeah, and they're scoring points. That's the other part of this, Ian. It's not an offense where we say, "Oh, we want to get a piece of this," but they're like kind of coming down back, like you said, back into a pumpkin, whatever you want to say, back down to earth. Like, they're scoring points still. Like, even since they played the Chargers, right? You're looking at 38, 27 against this, or I'm sorry, 20 against the Steelers, 31 against the Falcons. Like, they're still scoring points. And so again, Alec Pierce, we've already said it. Like, he has this job where he's going to stretch the field. And so when you see Daniel Jones loading up, more times than not, he's looking for Alec Pierce down there, and he's just one where he stays involved. And that was the other conversation that we had, right? Is like, okay, is this going to be a little bit fluky? Like, sometimes you're just not going to know when to start him. But at this point, with how well the team is scoring and just how good of games we've seen, at least from like as a whole, right? Daniel Jones has come back down to earth a little bit. I think you still want a piece of this offense to see how it goes, because like you said, they've got the Chiefs after their bye, then they play the Texans, not amazing, but then they take on the Jaguars, Seahawks, 49ers, Jaguars one more time, and then the Texans to end things out. Yeah, I want a piece of it.
And again, guys, 12 sacks taken, 6 fumbles these last 2 weeks for Daniel Jones. That's bad, but I guess like you can't get much worse than that from Daniel Jones. And they still had 519 total yards against the Falcons. They still threw for 313 yards against the Steelers. Can't have the turnovers. I get it. But again, wouldn't be expecting this passing game as a whole to be brutal down the stretch or anything like that. Last wide receiver I want to touch on is Buccaneers pint-sized speedster Tez Johnson. Kendall, the Tasmanian Devil, is freaking balling out here. Had another 2 touchdowns here yesterday. And just again is really emerging as an awesome Robin to Emeka Egbuka's Batman. But even at that point, man, look, Emeka Egbuka is the wide receiver 1 in Tampa Bay. Don't want to be, don't get that twisted at all. Everyone realizes it's not up for debate. Since week 6, though, Kendall, and even since week 7, if you want to exclude the hamstring game, Tez Johnson, he's got more PPR points than Emeka Egbuka. So again, more so just praise for Tez than any sort of Egbuka slander. But hey, just removing Egbuka from the whole thing. Since week 6, which is when we saw Tez actually get that full-time role in the first place, he's worked as the wide receiver 21 in PPR points per game. I think the Buccaneers might have something here.
And I think they're going to figure it out sooner rather than later. I think I saw that he had, a 12% target share in week 10. So it's not something that we're just like sitting here being like, oh yeah, let's go. We love that. But I think with the Chris Godwin injury, like I don't know about you. I think that's bad. They tell us late November, maybe December, and we can't really trust this team. Honestly, we can't trust any head coach to really give us any transparent answer. But if you have Chris Godwin, I'm nervous about it until mid-December, late December. It's one of those things where I have to see it to believe it. So if we don't get him back in that timeline, Tez Johnson's going to step up. You had mentioned Kate Otten earlier before, but I just think this is someone that it might be a splash play for the last couple of weeks. But now that we've seen kind of what he can do, they might have to be relying on him a little bit more. So he's definitely someone, especially in maybe deeper formats, he could still be out there. When we talk about roster percentages, I have mine on Yahoo. At fantasylife.com, so you guys can go and check it out. But he should be pretty available, and he's actually averaged 13.34 fantasy points over the last 5 games. So you'll take that off the waiver wire any day.
Chris Godwin, I would not be surprised if he doesn't even play another snap this season. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Mike Evans' estimated return date is still looking like late December, if at all. So again, great stuff from Tez Johnson. These next 2 weeks, we got potential shootouts between Baker Mayfield and then Josh Allen and also Matthew Stafford, Bills and Rams. Then we got some winnable matchups against the Cardinals, Saints, Falcons, Panthers, and Dolphins to close things out. Friendly reminder, everyone, if you do want a good DST for that stretch, it would be Tampa Bay. I imagine they're going to be really available here again with more tough matchups on deck. So got my way too early ranks out of fantasylife.com. You guys should check out that article each and every week. I like to kind of recap things in addition to getting a look ahead. And honestly, Kendall was surprised that I already had Tez Johnson so high, wide receiver 26 in those ranks, just behind guys like Romeo Dobbs, Stephon Diggs, Tedero McMillan, Cortland Sutton. Have him ahead, though, of Wan'Dale Robinson, Khalil Shakur, Juwan Jennings, and Troy Franklin, amongst others. So, wide receiver 26, it feels like a lot, but at the same time, Kendall, I don't know, maybe as we get closer to Sunday, it's like Tez Johnson versus Cortland Sutton. It's a conversation. I did not think it would be a conversation a few short weeks ago.
Isn't that crazy in the year 2025 when you get down to week 11 and you're like, please, I just need fantasy points from anyone. Maybe it's going to be Tez Johnson. But no, but it's true. Like, that's why I love looking at your rankings so early, is like trying to figure it out. And so for Tez Johnson, like I said, when you have someone almost like how we had the conversation with Alec Pierce starting a couple weeks ago, when you have someone coming off the waiver wire where we say, oh, this is a good flex play. Like when we say flex play, at least for me, and I'm not saying, oh, he's going to give you 20 plus fantasy points, but when someone's averaging 0.34 fantasy points over the last 5 games, like you need to start paying attention to them. And these are the nitty gritty wins that you need to get yourself into the fantasy playoffs. So I wouldn't look away from Tez Johnson, even though it's not the sexiest of names, right? He is still someone that's coming up. So makes sense. I like that wide receiver 26. I'll have to remind myself when I'm doing mine that that's where you have yours.
And especially, guys, if we continue to see this Bills secondary banged up, they were without stud cornerback Christian Benford and then also Teron Johnson last week. We saw what the Dolphins just did to him. Wouldn't be surprised if Baker Mayfield and company put together one heck of an encore. So, again, big 3 waiver wire wide receiver additions if they happen to be available in your league. Parker Washington, Alec Pierce, and Tez Johnson. In terms of trying to order those up, Kendall, I think because the bye week's already gone, I'd probably go Tez, Pierce, and then Washington. Just base league. I'm not so worried about this week, like the rest of the season. Tez, Pierce, Washington, same thing for you?
Yeah, because you could play Tez this week. The only thing that's the only thing keeping Alec Pierce out of being my number one. Yeah. And then, like I said, like Parker Washington, it just depends on who comes back or how much they're going to give Jacoby Myers once he gets up to speed. That's the only thing I'm worried about with him.
With you on all that. So hopefully Pierce has a nice bye week. I know Jonathan Taylor certainly needs that bye week after another 3-touchdown performance. And guys, want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsors here over at Pristine Auction. Check out this Jonathan Taylor signed frame jersey that is now available on Pristine Auction. You can find this and so much more cool memorabilia on their site. And we actually have a very special code for anyone looking to get in on the action. So guys, if you're already registered with Pristine Auction, well, then you can use code FANTASYLIFE when you win an item to receive $25 off at checkout. First time users can register using code FL20 to get $20 in credits added to your account. And then again, use that code FANTASYLIFE to get another 25 off only at Pristine Auction. Love me my waiver wire wide receivers. I have several leagues where I'm starting Tez Johnson. I picked up Alec Pierce and I'm starting him. I got Christian Watson going in a couple of leagues tonight. I get it. Times are tough, bye weeks, injuries, and all of that. That said, Kendall, hopefully my starting lineup is good enough so I can afford to basically just stash my bench with handcuffed running backs. As always, There's no position in fantasy football quite like a backup running back that has the ability to go from an absolute nobody to someone that the kids, again, will be calling a league winner here in no time. So got about 6 handcuffed running backs that, again, honestly, I probably prefer to stash even ahead of a lot of these, waiver wire darling wide receivers of the week, just because of that potential to be one injury away from shooting up those ranks. So want to start things off, Kendall, with someone returning from bye. We did not get a trade from their teammate, but that doesn't mean that Tajay Spears still isn't someone that should be on benches of most shapes and sizes. Available is still in, over 64% of Yahoo leagues, 62% of ESPN leagues. And just your friendly reminder, I know I said it a million times, but this man finished as the overall PPR RB5 during the fantasy playoffs last season. So I think he's looked fantastic with his opportunities since coming back from injury. And I know it's the Titans, Kendall. We aren't excited about that. But on the other side of things, okay, look, it's the Titans. Who else are they going to give the ball to down the stretch?
Exactly. There's not many times where you can go pick up someone that's the best at their position on the team. If that's how we want to look at Tajay Spears, we just want to be positive here. And he's the better running back between him and Tony Pollard. So there's not, like I said, many opportunities to get a guy like that off waivers. So I look from week 6 to 9, he's averaged 10.6 fantasy points per game. That ranks 25th among running backs, according to PFF. And Tony Pollard ranks 34th at 8.2 with those same stats. So I don't love the schedule coming up. So this is more more of a bleak situation if you have to look at Tajay Spears and say, I have to start him. But like you said, we have 2 more weeks after this coming week 11 of buys for teams. So I'm looking at him and saying, listen, he could be a good fill-in if I need him. Good maybe is being too nice. An okay fill-in, and maybe he gives you a spike week here or there. But again, he's better than Tony Pollard right now. So you don't usually get a guy that's the best at his position on his team right now off waivers. So he's definitely someone to go and get.
I know Cam Ward had his lows, but guys, he has turned things around after a really tough first 4 weeks. I mean, they had to play the Broncos, the Rams. It was one tough matchup after another. I think he was only averaging 150 yards per game. He's been up closer to 250 again over his last 4 to 5 games of action. And just having watched this dude, back a couple times, because let's face it, Titans not exactly appointment viewing, in the middle of a Sunday out here. But this dude flashes that insane #1 overall pick worthy arm talent each and every week. So again, not saying we're going to see huge numbers down the stretch or anything, but God forbid Calvin really gets healthy. Maybe I'm the only person on the planet that cares about this, but there's one of us, Kendall, Chamari, DK, obviously doing his thing as well. I do think there could be just enough production to go around for Tajay Spears to potentially help people out down the stretch. More guys who, again, are going to be, we want to stash them, but maybe don't have the same sort of standalone upside as Tajay Spears. First up, though, Kendall, arguably one of the best handcuffs, I would say, in all fantasy football, Brian Robinson Jr., low-key making the most out of his opportunities in San Francisco. Right now, guys, he's actually averaging a career best 4.9 yards per carry behind the same offensive line that Christian McCaffrey is only averaging 3.5 yards per carry behind. So he's been running violent, been running hard. And no, he's not going to catch, 10 balls a game like CMC or anything like that. But we've seen Elijah Mitchell. We've seen Jordan Mason. We've seen these guys provide borderline RB1 numbers anyway. Who's to say Brian Robinson Jr. couldn't do that as well? God forbid if CMC misses time.
Exactly. We don't want CMC to miss time. No one's saying that. He's obviously sold his soul. I don't know what he did this season, Ian, to stay healthy, but we love it for fantasy football. But yeah, he was held to what? It was 12 carries for 30 yards in week 10. And then you look at the receiving production alone for CMC is really where we get the fantasy bread and butter, right? That's where we get the goodness for fantasy. That alone would be enough to get for 7th most fantasy points at the position. As a runner, though, I looked this up. 168 carries that's led the league, but he's only averaged 3.5 yards per carry, and has not had a 16-plus yard run. So that's from NBC. So the one thing with Brian Robinson is that we saw him turn 8 carries into 41 yards and a touchdown week 10. We have to start paying attention. If they really are going to move this or shift this in a different direction, if you've been holding on to Brian Robinson Jr., this is the exact reason, and this is the exact moment where you see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, because it's so tough, Ian, for a whole season to be hanging on to someone. You never want injuries, but that's the only way that they're going to find their way onto your starting lineup. And so this is one that I'm paying attention to. Again, it's Christian McCaffrey's world. We're still living in it. I don't even think this puts Brian Robinson Jr. in flex position yet. I think he's still just a pure handcuff, but I want to see what it looks like for the next couple of weeks and then going into the fantasy playoffs.
At a minimum, CMC, fantasy managers out there, you're feeling good about your season. CMC is healthy. For the love of God, get Brian Robinson Jr. on your bench, guys. You do not want to be facing a scenario where CMC wins the lottery, takes the rest of the year off, and then you are stuck without, again, one of the more valuable handcuffs out there. So, again, never want to wish an injury on anyone. CMC is on pace, though, for 423 touches, Kendall. That would actually be the 8th highest mark since the 2000 season. We have not seen really anyone get that close since DeMarco Murray had 449 back in 2014. So great to see CMC healthy. And it's also great to see Bijan Robinson healthy, but God forbid something happened there. As we all saw on Sunday in Berlin, Tyler Algier would be the next man up taking over. Kendall, I do cackle just at the idea of some Berlin children thinking oh yeah, Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Algier, just, the 2 best running backs that I guess America has to offer at this point. But in Algier's defense, I know on this season, his yards per carry pales, in comparison to Bijan Robinson, but was certainly making the most out of his opportunities yesterday. And just when you're kind of being used more in that short yardage role, goal line opportunities, similar to Zach Charbonnet, honestly, you're not exactly being set up for these, super efficient rush attempts anyway. So Tyler Algier, end of the day, I equated him to a 70% Bijan Robinson when I was kind of breaking down these tiers in an article last week. And guess what, Kendall? 70% of Bijan Robinson is going to still be scoring a lot of fantasy points.
I mean, but what are we doing here, Ian? Why do the children of Berlin get to see Tyler Algier score touchdowns? Like, I don't know what weird alternate timeline we're living in, because Bijan Robinson is better than like Kenneth Walker, like you just said, to his Zach Charbonnet. It just, I don't know. I don't know what timeline we're living in or what I missed here. But for Algier to take over the red zone role from Bijan Robinson is huge. And this is I think this is a completely opposite conversation of what we just had when we talk about Brian Robinson Jr. Like Tyler Algier, depending on who you have in your leagues, you're probably starting him in the flex spot. And you're saying, all right, this is perfect because he's taken over this role that we would just assume that Bijan Robinson, has. And he just doesn't have it. So if for whatever reason Tyler Algier is out there, like throw away everything we've talked about so far this show, put him at the very top of your list because he shouldn't be. And if you have Bijan, I really do hope that you were able to kind of handcuff those two together. But if not, he's definitely at the top of the list. I mean, 17.7 fantasy points from Tyler Algier is just nothing. You can't even laugh at it. You're just like, okay, he's got this role where we have to pay attention, and now he's probably more than flex worthy.
He's only rostered in 33% of Yahoo leagues, 28% of ESPN leagues. So he is out there for the taking this season. Bijan Robinson, still the RB5 in PPR points per game. He's on pace for 336 touches. But yeah, only 2 of the team's 7 design rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. Certainly not as many as fantasy managers would prefer. But hey, life isn't fair. Still be happy you have Bijan Robinson on the squad. Another handcuff, Kendall. This one actually is going to be more so available, and I would imagine most people's leagues out there. And he shouldn't be. Los Angeles Rams RB2. Blake Corum, guys, someone who honestly, again, is starting to find his way to 10 to 12 carries per game as it is. You know, you could do worse in a flex option, God forbid, when some of these extra bye weeks start coming along. And just based on what we've seen from Sean McVay over the years, whether it was CJ Anderson, Todd Gurley, Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown, the list goes on, he's been more willing to leave one running back on the field more often than pretty much any other coach out there. Specifically last season, Kyren Williams had more games with a 90% or even 75% plus snap total than any team in the league. So Chase Brown and the Bengals were second, so make sure you keep an eye on him, and with Smudge at Pirine being out. But yeah, guys, Blake Corum, again, only rostered in 11% of Yahoo leagues, 8.5% of ESPN leagues. And Kendall, it might be one of those things, honestly, where like going into next week, I have Kyren Williams as my RB13. I think if Kyren was out, you could almost argue that Blake Corum would be ranked higher than what Kyren is right now, because Jarquez Hunter, despite all that great lip service in the offseason, 0 touches this year. So literally one injury away from just being a complete workhorse and one of the best offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, rest in peace, Jarquez Hunter. He's not, everything's fine, but like I love looking back at the hype that we had. And we're
not
like,
dead, just to be clear.
Not dead, just bad. It's fine. But yeah, Blake Corum here has like at least a dozen touches in 3 straight games. So again, when we're looking at this, I like what you just said, that you would maybe rank him a little bit higher than where you have Kyren Williams right now. But in the last 3 weeks, they had a bye in week 8, so take that into consideration. But starting in week 7, you've got 12 carries, 13 and 13 for one Blake Corum. That hasn't produced many fantasy points, right? You're only sitting at 5.3, 5.8, 5.6. So that's sitting right around his average this season. But still, you have to look at this and say, yeah, if he were to go down, Kyren Williams, like, there is a really good chance that Blake Corum would be hopefully more close to a league winner than what we've seen so far this season. So again, it was this week, the rotation by drive, I think, is what we saw. So it was pretty evenly split. But yeah, he's definitely someone where if we're talking handcuffs, you want to have, and you have to make sure you have them. We say this every week, Ian, how important it is, because this is the back half of the season when these running backs tend to get injured, or they have such a big workload that all of a sudden they start to shut down. So that's why it's so important. We say it all the time, but especially going into week 11, you need to be paying attention to these guys.
So again, guys, Tyjae Spears, he's the one where if you're actively looking for someone to hopefully be able to slide into that flex spot, Tyjae Spears could be ranked as the RB30 during any given week. He's been out producing Tony Pollard here. So he's more so your guy for that. Pure handcuff bench stash, but my God, is the ceiling high if something happens to the starter. Tyler Algier, Brian Robinson, and Blake Corum. That's in order of, again, Algier being more rostered and Corum being least. Next 2, Kendall, still very good bench stashes. I just have, I guess, one slightly, bright red flag for them. So starting off with, your favorite fantasy analyst, favorite late round sleeper, Bashaw Tootin over there with the Jaguars. No post by bump. Travis Etienne continues to be the running back y'all in Jacksonville, so not expecting a takeover or anything like that, but still only rostered on 32% of Yahoo leagues, 20% of ESPN leagues, and God forbid something did happen to Etienne, Bashaw Tootin would be on the cover of all these waiver wire articles, and for good reason. The dude is explosive, and he would be the next man up to take over the bulk of those carries. My one concern would just be the potential for LaQuint Allen to turn this into a little bit of an annoying timeshare, where, again, it's one of these situations where everyone would want Bashaw to be the lead back. And I do think he'd lead the way in touches, but we're already seeing it week to week. Like LaQuint Allen is honestly challenging Tootin for more total snaps because of everything he can do in the pass game. So again, if I had to, just go ahead this week, imagine ETN was out and rank him, Tootin would be the guy that'd be an RB2. LaQuint Allen would be more like an RB borderline 3 or something like that. But Bashaw, Tootin, Kendall, someone in an offense that has been able to run the ball okay this year, he would be someone that, again, would recommend getting on that bench if you can.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, this is another thing where sometimes people make dumb moves. So if you're looking at someone that adds Bashaw Tootin, drops Alec Pierce, pick up Alec Pierce, vice versa, all this stuff, right? You just want to make sure you have these guys. But I do agree with you on Bashaw Tootin of just you're okay with the backfield. We've seen it before with ETN with injuries as well. So once you start to look at that, and it's the same for the next guy you're going to talk about. Like we've seen injuries before, or just like lack of good play down the stretch. So he's definitely someone to keep an eye on.
And I will say, as much as, giving T-Law and Liam Cohen a little bit of slander earlier, the one good thing that we have seen out of this Liam Cohen offense, their RB rush yards before contact per carry. I know it's a lot of mumble there, but again, it's just a good way of trying to go ahead and quantify a team's run blocking, with their offensive line. You regularly see a lot of dual threat offenses, the Ravens, the Bills, the Eagles ranked near the top of the league. But aside them, you got teams like the 49ers and the Lions, some of the better well-schemed groups. Ben Johnson has taken the Bears from like 23rd to 1st this year. And we've also seen a nice impact from Liam Cohen and Jacksonville. Last year they were 25th, and they are all the way up to 15th this year as well. So Nick Caley and the Texans have also improved that, and Brian Schottenheimer and the Cowboys have also made a nice jump as well. So good stuff from those guys. Not as good from the Browns in particular. They have really had quite the nosedive there. I do think that's a big reason why Quinshon Judkins has been riding the struggle bus as of late. Last handcuff running back talk about Kendall, someone who's playing here on Monday night, so get your popcorn ready for that one wherever you are going to illegally stream it. But Packers RB Emmanuel Wilson, only rostered in 8% of Yahoo leagues, 7% of ESPN formats. And this is a situation where Josh Jacobs is already actively banged up with a calf issue. They're managing it. He says it feels better. But I go back to that Cardinals game, Kendall, where he was a legit game time decision out there and basically had to, really coax the Packers coaches into letting him play. So Emmanuel Wilson is someone who I think has flashed with his opportunities. And again, it's just a situation of, even if you know nothing about Emmanuel Wilson, look at the Packers offense. They have no other running backs, with all due respect to Chris Brooks and Marshawn Lloyd, wherever he is right now, that are going to be overly competing, I should say, for touches. So Emmanuel Wilson is someone where, no, I'm not crossing off Josh Jacobs as my RB5 and penciling in Emmanuel Wilson, but I think it'd be pretty tough to rank him outside the top 15 for any given week if Jacobs is going to be missing time.
Oh, yeah, because you said the other guys, where are they? I mean, it's just someone was in my mention the other day, Ian, talking about, well, what about Marshawn Lloyd? And I'm like, don't you want a player that's healthy that we see every single week? Because where is Marshawn Lloyd?
Did you see the update on him?
What? No, shut up. What happened? What?
LaFleur literally said, he said they sent him out west to get his body right. Like, where?
Oh my
What's that mean?
He's like, I can't even make jokes.
We sent
about
our dog,
like
sent our dog to the farm. Just one of those situations.
What are we doing?
Sorry,
so
Kendall,
someone's in my mentions, Ian, and I'm like, what? Don't you want someone that's played? Like, I've defended Marshawn Lloyd for 2 years now, and I just have to stop. Like, it just gets embarrassing to a point for myself where I just say, you know what? I just have to stop. So yeah, if you want a healthy running back that could step up into a bigger role, it is Emmanuel Wilson. Sorry to all the Marshawn Lloyd lovers. I was you once, and I've moved on with my life because we just can't continue to do it. So Josh Jacobs, you made a point though. He's been banged up, and so that's the other part of this where Emmanuel Wilson would step into a big role, and I think it would be immediately, and it wouldn't even be a question, like you said, with your rankings, Ian. And so we've seen him with work, right? It's not been incredible work. It's 3 carries here, 6, 11, 6. But I just really want to say that if we do ever see Josh Jacobs go down, which we don't want because we never want injuries, but the fantasy playoff schedule minus week 15, because the Denver Broncos on the road, that's where they would be. They would be at the Denver Broncos, always tough. But then they take on the Chicago Bears, Baltimore Ravens week 17. So those are matchups that, and I think Baltimore's defense gets a little bit better as the season goes on, but still good matchups to look at there. So yeah, Emmanuel Wilson's definitely a guy to target.
Again, 50 touches this year for Emmanuel Wilson, only 9 for Chris Brooks, their RB3 at this point. So would be expecting 15 to 20 or so combined carries and targets for Emmanuel Wilson per week. Tough to argue with that. So again, guys, those were our handcuff stashes. To reiterate again, Tyjae Spears, more so that flex option. Tyler Algier, Brian Robinson, Blake Corum in that top tier, and then Bashaw Tootin and Emmanuel Wilson more in the bottom. So I did break down even more handcuff running backs in my 10 Things article last week. You can find that at fantasylife.com if you are so inclined. But But Kendall, unfortunately, we do have plenty of other injuries, not even in the backfield out there. So let's go ahead and continue the Fantasy Life show with an injury watch. Doctor, give me the news. I don't know when they're going to, though, Kendall. So let's go ahead and try to break down some of these ongoing situations, and hopefully we get clarity sooner rather than later. Starting off with Giants quarterback Jackson Dart, again, in the concussion protocol. So this is a unique situation, though, where, again, sometimes we see the starter go down. The backup is just like, good God, can this guy even complete a forward pass? Russell Wilson, maybe not, the same dangerous as years past. I see you stunting your Seahawks hat, Kendall. So, again, not saying they're getting that guy out there, but between Russ and Jameis, like, if you just had to go through the league and kind of rank every backup quarterback room, I think they would actually be near the top of the situation. So not an ideal matchup here against the Packers and everything, but just looking at the ranks, I got Wan'Dale Robinson as my wide receiver 27. I got Darius Slayton as wide receiver 40. We'll see how his hamstring, issue goes. But I don't think it's a situation where just because Dart's out, we need to necessarily nosedive these guys.
Yeah, I don't think he would nosedive it, but I don't know what we need to do, Ian, to get Jameis Winston out there. Like, please, if they're gonna lose, like, can you just do it in a fun way where we're at least getting the YOLO balls and everything like that? So I think I did write up Russ, and I hated every second of it, but it's really only if you're totally desperate. Like, you do have Jackson Dart. Everyone else has everyone already on their roster. People shouldn't be too down bad this weekend because, again, it's only two teams on a bye, and it's the Colts with Daniel Jones, and then it's the Saints. So hopefully you weren't like starting Tyler Shuck everywhere all at once. But if you were, my condolences. But yeah, you shouldn't be too down bad. But I guess Russ is definitely someone to take a look at if you need a 1-for-1 replacement. I wish it was Jameis Winston, but it feels like it's not going to be because they don't like fun. And it's fine.
God, if Mike Kafka wanted to become just the most popular interim coach in NFL history, just start Jameis. That's all you have to do, man. It's all you have to do. One more, I would say, fantasy relevant injury to keep an eye on, at least in terms of, being excited about the backup, is with Broncos RB J.K. Dobbins. So we don't exactly know what's going on here. Obviously, suffered that foot injury last Thursday night. But when you start hearing that he's getting a second opinion on the foot, seems like a good idea or at least, a good thought that it could have been a bad first opinion on there. So with Dobbins potentially being out this week, Kendall, RJ Harvey stepping up to take on the Chiefs. So not exactly a golden matchup here, but Harvey in limited opportunities has made the most out of them, actually leads all running backs in PPR points per touch this season. So RJ Harvey, Kendall, he's someone where, again, on the surface, 6 to 8 touches per week, can't get too excited about it. If J.K. Dobbins was out, though, I have Travion Henderson, RB 14, Quinshon Judkins, RB 15, Breece Hall, Jalen Warren, Aaron Jones after that. I think Harvey slides right into that group.
Ooh, I like that. Look at this, Ian. It's all come full circle for our Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey shares that you take back to back. I was looking back at some of my drafts. Disgusting. It's Henderson, and then I would come back around with RJ Harvey and think I would get the steal of the draft. Dumb, looking at it now. But we might have it. You're saying there might be a chance. And that's no offense to J.K. Dobbins. But here's the thing with J.K. Dobbins. Is anyone shocked that he could potentially be injured? Because he does this every single season. He always has these injuries in the season, whether it's earlier, whether it's right now going into week 11, and he just doesn't usually finish out seasons. So I'm hoping the best for J.K. Dobbins because in my mind, Ian, he's been very surprising so far this season, and it's been nice to see him healthy. But if he isn't out there able to go, then yeah, it feels like it would be the RJ Harvey show. And that would be, I just think it would be a really good time for everyone because based on where he was going, especially in those later drafts, people have been sitting on him and maybe they put him together in a trade package or whatever else. But he's been collecting dust probably on a lot of people's benches. So this would be a really nice time to get yourself ready to go for the fantasy playoffs if he was just the one RB1 in this backfield.
And guys, I just shaved the beard, but I still got some gray hair showing. Like, I'm old enough to remember Sean Payton's just disastrous, player usage over the years and trying to predict it. Okay. So I'm not saying this is a sure thing necessarily, but just again, the explosiveness, probably be the next man up. I know Tyler Bidet, maybe even Jaleel McLaughlin would also see their roles increase, but you got to think RJ Harvey would be the top candidate to get those touches and certainly make the most of them. Moving along, Kendall, we do have Cardinals running back Bam Knight currently dealing with an ankle injury. All Gannon had to say on Trey Benson recently was that, quote, he's doing well, he's progressing. 49ers are a winnable matchup this week. They weren't supposed to be, but when you lose Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, half their other front seven, all of a sudden it's not exactly a spot to overly fear. So with Bam Knight potentially missing time, can we get back on the Amari DiMercato train? I guess I will say, man, this dude is starting to make some big plays out there. Maybe that, just again, disastrous fumble against the Titans was the spark he needed. He's been playing well. He would be the Cardinals running back I'd be wanting to start here again if Bam Knight and Trey Benson are sidelined. How about you?
Yeah, same here. I mean, because when you look at Carter, he took over the primary early down back at once this injury happened. And then I think we also saw a little bit of Carter as well. I think Carter's worth a stash if you're looking on the waiver wire as well. But if you do have Amari DiMercato, like he could be someone, isn't that so gross, Ian? Like going into week 11, we're like, yes, Amari DiMercato. But since we have no update on Trey Benson, you just kind of have to keep rolling with whoever they're rolling out there with. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, I think both of them could be a worthwhile stash for Carter, but Amari DiMercato, we've seen him play time and time again, so he would definitely be the one that I go look at.
Hey, if we see Bam Knight out and Trey Benson remains sidelined, I can see him getting in my top 30. I mean, I'm looking at it, RB 27, 28 right now, or Tyron Tracy and Woody Marks. That's kind of similar to DiMercato. And hey, Jacoby Brissett obviously wasn't pretty, in that blowout loss against the Seahawks, particularly in the first half. But we've seen him be capable enough moving this offense to believe that if you are, again, continuing to condense this backfield, maybe, just maybe, Amari could be the guy you need. And tight end Land Kendall, I mentioned earlier in the intro, Dalton Kincaid going to be missing time with a hamstring injury. Should be Dawson Knox, and then also Jackson Halls as the next man up here. So not overly excited about this. I do still think it's going to be split. And honestly, probably just more pass game targets being funneled to Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, if he can ever get healthy. Josh Palmer, let's face it, Josh Allen and James Cook, really the only guys we still feeling good about. Also, I think there's too much to say about Garrett Wilson. Mentioned the re-aggravation, already kind of made fun of their wide receiver room. And then I will just kind of end things on a good note. Oronde Gadsden dealing with that knee injury considered day-to-day. Wouldn't be trusting Tyler Conklin or Will Dissly if Gadsden's out of the picture. Maybe you can help things out for these other non-Ladd McConkey wide receivers, though, Kendall, because since Gadsden got the full-time role in week 6, the total targets have been 46 for Ladd McConkey, 36 for Keenan Allen, 33 for Gadsden, and just 22 for Quentin Johnson. He did miss one game in that stretch, but clearly Gadsden has made it tough for Keenan and QJ to build off those huge Septembers.
Yeah, Keenan Allen has killed me in guillotine leagues, and he's killing me in fantasy leagues as well. Because at one point you thought, wow, what a steal that I got Keenan Allen at this stage. And it's really only been, it was the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And then he had the big blowout game against the Indianapolis Colts for 28 fantasy points. And since then, 8.4, 6.1, 3.9. But at least he's, he's getting in the history books. At least we saw that on Sunday. So that's all you can look at here. But yeah, Oronde Gadsden, good news, because that's a waiver wire hero so far this season. So you were happy with the day-to-day, what it looks like day-to-day. And so you just hope that he's good to go in week 11.
I'm getting chopped this week, and Keenan Allen is a part of that why. So no one to blame but the man in the mirror. I'm trying to be a professional here. I would never, ever get mad at Keenan Allen for that, but would have been a lot cooler. Maybe he could score more than whatever freaking fantasy points he got out there. But hey, Kendall, no one else to blame but me. It's all good. I'm going to be the bigger man about it. But man, it sucks to get cut and guillotined. The good news, again, and we've been always saying it, as bad as I feel, and it's going to, be refreshing the cut line, seeing if, can pull off a Monday Night Miracle. I will say, Kendall, having a bad guillotine league team, you're done. You're not watching this 2-7 team, throughout November where you're already dead and having to do waivers. That is one of the underrated good things about guillotine too.
I know. It's one of those things too, Ian, where I missed a waiver wire deadline last week, and it sucks because there's only how many teams do we have left? Like 10, 9 teams in guillotine league formats right now. So when I missed that one, I was like, oh, I could just go for the second run. Wrong. I'm losing by 70 points in one league. And I'm just like, well, there we go. I don't have to worry about you anymore. This is absolutely embarrassing. And now people get to pick apart my scraps from a team that lost. But at least we made it this far, Ian, right? I mean, we can hang our hat on that.
Yeah, it's like that, graphic of the dude just, pouring champagne, celebrating for finishing in 9th place. So worth the first team's cut, I guess. As always, we'll watch the film and get better. And watch the film and get better. We did, guys. Let's close out the Fantasy Live show with our Week 10 Sheesh Report. As always, every Monday here on the Fantasy Live Show, I like to go over some of the beyond the box score, near miss moments that maybe you didn't catch if you weren't tuned into the game, but again, help paint a more full picture of what actually went down on the gridiron over the past few days. So starting off with players who got tackled at the 1-yard line, but unfortunately did not score a touchdown on the same drive. Again, so close, yet so far away at the end of the day. Headlined by Travion Henderson, not once, not twice, but 3 times on the same drive. Kendall got stuffed. Luckily, the Patriots did cap it off with a touchdown touchdown to Stephon Diggs, but that's right, literally just about 3 feet separated Henderson from a 3-touchdown performance in that massive Week 10. Also, no Devin Singletary, Bam Knight, Amari J. Mercado themselves also got stuffed at the goal line, as did Deebo Samuel, Rashad Bateman, Ashton Doolin, Drake May, Russell Wilson, Colby Parkinson, and Kyle Juszczyk. So as much as that's annoying for Henderson, Kendall, I can certainly say that, you know what, I forgive him because thank you, Travion, for not sliding down short of the goal line. The man is so freaking fast that he was able to check with his sideline and get confirmation that it was okay for him to score. I have never seen anything like that.
Dude, when he was doing that, first of all, I saw your tweet, hilarious. And then when he was doing that in the moment, I was yelling at my TV. I was like, Travion, you're already in the doghouse. Please don't do this like running, next to the end zone or anything like that. Cause that's what I thought he was doing at first. And I was like, or don't drop the ball. I thought he was going to do that too. So I was like, thank goodness he was just checking in with his team because he's already in the doghouse. So thank you, Travion Henderson, for giving us fantasy points. I really appreciate that for once.
I do hate in those moments. I know Todd Gurley had the famous one. He was on the Falcons where, he got like thrown into the end zone and the other team comes down and score. They always blame it on the running back who, probably shouldn't have scored. But how about your defense doesn't give up a freaking 70-yard drive in, 50 seconds or whatever it usually is. Obviously had the Nick Chubb one against the Jets a couple years ago. And that's what they talk about at the end of the game. It's not the defense completely crapping the bed there. It's just something to keep in mind. But again, could have been a bigger day for Travion. I think his fantasy managers were just fine with the results anyway. Also want to break down unrealized air yards, guys. Again, this is a nerdy way of basically trying to quantify the total number of air yards on incomplete targets. So again, when we have someone maybe like Malik Washington only catching 1 of 5 targets, well, they were just screen passes anyway. Who really cares? But when it could be someone like this week, Justin Jefferson, we can see that they really had a ton of fantasy-friendly opportunity, but for one reason or another could not quite get it done. And oh my goodness, did Justin Jefferson have a lot. 197 unrealized air yards, guys. That is the highest single game mark of 2025 and the 4th highest single game mark since 2020. So far and away the number one most, I guess you could say, unlucky, unfortunate wide receiver. Again, these fall under a variety of categories where sometimes it's a bad throw. Other times, like what could have been a potential 25-yard touchdown, we should be pointing the finger at the receiver. Jettas did happen to drop that one. It just showed kind of some weird, I would say, just apathy out there, Kendall. Again, Jefferson usually, he's had to deal with a ton of bad quarterbacks over these years. I understand McCarthy has been, the least efficient. He's had some good stuff with Darnold and stuff but I don't know, Nick Mullins, Kirk Cousins, he's had issues with these guys, but just very weird effort level from Jefferson on Sunday. I don't expect it to persist. They got a nice bounce back spot from the Bears, but man, Kendall, we're going on about 4 games now between Jefferson and McCarthy, and the dude just cannot break through.
Yeah, that was weird. Like I was looking back and watching that game and I saw some of the highlights, or the lowlights, I guess you could say, of Justin Jefferson kind of like giving up on plays. And I was like, it's not really great. So hopefully we see a little bit better from JJ McCarthy, right? And then hopefully we see a little bit more from Justin Jefferson. But yeah, he's obviously not necessarily happy, Ian, but please, like we need to get this man happy, healthy, ready to go for our fantasy playoff push. So please, just whatever Justin Jefferson wants, he gets. Let's do that.
More guys that, again, close but no cigars to having a bigger day. Troy Franklin, Keon Coleman, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf, Rome Odunze, Jalen Waddle, and also Darnell Mooney. So with that in mind, guys, we can put a bow on Week 10 and shift all of our focus to Week 11. Hope you all enjoy Monday Night Football. May all your Monday night miracles come true. And otherwise, just have a great rest of your day as we get ready for the fantasy playoff push. So for Kendall, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.